Some say it's an idea whose time has come.
The global economy needs to have a global currency.
Μαζί σου το ταξίδι αυτό το ξέρω, το έχω κάνει πιο παλιά πολλές φορές και το υποφέρω. Μα όταν συγχώνεις ουρανό και μου μικραίνει πάλι γη, με πονάει ξανά του χρόνου η πληγή. Μοιάζουν μικρά τα είδωλά σου Βαβυλώνα, την εξαίρεση ότι βλέπω στον κανόνα. Είναι αφαντοί οι νικητές, αδύναμοι μηχανισμοί σου. Τα είδωλά σου από εδώ αναγνωούν την ύπαρξή σου. Μ' αυτό που μένει και η πιο μεγάλη διαφορά είναι ότι κρύβεται καλά η διαφθορά κάτω από σάρκες, μέσα σε τείχους, σαν να κρατάει φυλακισμένους λέει τους ήχους της ψυχής που έχει γνωρίσει απ' την γαλήνη, για να αγκαλιάζει ότι μίσουσε και ότι φτύνει. Παντού μογίλη πως θολώσει η εικόνα, μα εγώ σ' ακούω και σε νιώθω Βαβυλώνα. Σε η νύχτα ώρα να πάμε χαμηλά, κι ας γουστάραμε κι οι δυο από ψηλά. Νιώθω πως έρχομαι ακόμα πιο κοντά σου. Είναι αυτό το βουητό και η μυρωδιά σου, που άλλους μαγεύει, άλλους τρελαίνει, άλλους παιδεύει. Μα εμένα όσο σε θυμάμαι με μπερδεύει. Για το σωστό, για την αλήθεια, για το ψέμα, την αδικία, τη μοναξιά, την τύχη και το αίμα. Κι είναι τα φώτα δυνατά και τρομάζω. Δεν με έχεις μάθει καλά, το φόβο να αγοράζω. Κι ενώ με θες και με τραβάς πάλι κοντά σου, εγώ μπορεί να έχω ξεχάσει από το φόβο το όνομά σου. Να σε λέω σιωπή, να σε λέω γιορτή, να σε λέω σιγουριά, να σε λέω γιατί, να σε λέω τραγούδι, να σε λέω εικόνα, ή έτσι απλά Βαβυλώνα. Μαζί σου το ταξίδι αυτό το ξέρω, το έχω κάνει πιο παλιά πολλές φορές και το υποφέρω. Μα όταν συγχώνεις ουρανό και μου μικραίνει πάλι γη, με πονάει ξανά του χρόνου η πληγή. Μοιάζουν μικρά τα είδωλά σου Βαβυλώνα, την εξαίρεση ότι βλέπω στον κανόνα. Είναι αφαντοί οι νικητές, αδύναμοι μηχανισμοί σου. Τα είδωλά σου από εδώ αναγνωούν την ύπαρξή σου. Μ' αυτό που μένει και η πιο μεγάλη διαφορά είναι ότι κρύβεται καλά η διαφθορά κάτω από σάρκες, μέσα σε τείχους, σαν να κρατάει φυλακισμένους λέει τους ήχους της ψυχής που έχει γνωρίσει απ' την γαλήνη, για να αγκαλιάζει ότι μίσουσε και ότι φτύνει. Παντού μογίλη πως θολώσει η εικόνα, μα εγώ σ' ακούω και σε νιώθω Βαβυλώνα. Σε η νύχτα ώρα να πάμε χαμηλά, κι ας γουστάραμε κι οι δυο από ψηλά. Νιώθω πως έρχομαι ακόμα πιο κοντά σου. Είναι αυτό το βουητό και η μυρωδιά σου, που άλλους μαγεύει, άλλους τρελαίνει, άλλους παιδεύει. Μα εμένα όσο σε θυμάμαι με μπερδεύει. Για το σωστό, για την αλήθεια, για το ψέμα, την αδικία, τη μοναξιά, την τύχη και το αίμα. Κι είναι τα φώτα δυνατά και τρομάζω. Δεν με έχεις μάθει καλά, το φόβο να αγοράζω. Κι ενώ με θες και με τραβάς πάλι κοντά σου, εγώ μπορεί να έχω ξεχάσει από το...
Currency. Now the UN is backing a plan to change all of that and create a new global currency. If that's the case, what does it mean for you? David Lee Miller is live in New York. David Lee, good morning to you. How serious is this idea?
Right now, it is not very serious, but it still poses a threat to the U.S. This, of course, is what we're talking about, the U.S. dollar. And who doesn't love the U.S. dollar? Well, as you point out, apparently some economists at the United Nations, they issued a recent report at the UN Conference of Trade and Development just a few days ago. And that report said that part of the world's recent financial crisis is to be blamed on trade imbalances as well as the current system of currency and capital rules. But like it or not, Bill, the dollar remains the most popular currency in the world. It is the standard by which all other currencies are judged.
George Soros, one of the world's top investors, believes the euro may lose value, and not just lose value, but really fall off a cliff. But question is he maybe responsible for this? Here to talk to me is investigative journalist Webster Tarpley. Let's start with this possibility that George Soros might be possibly causing the demise of the euro. It started with a secret meeting. Go ahead and take it away.
I think we have now powerful circumstantial evidence that would put any investigator right on the trail. It's an attempt to create a new world monetary crisis. It's economic warfare to defend the dollar by attacking Greece, and through Greece attacking the euro. And the thing that's been revealed now in the last couple of days by the Wall Street Journal is a secret dinner at a Manhattan townhouse on February 8th, which was attended by a group of hedge fund predators. And these sociopaths, over a dinner of filet mignon, planned a speculative attack on Greek bonds and the euro using leverage rates of 20-1. And who was there? Mones, Crespi and Hart, a boutique investment bank, SAC Capital Advisors, Greenlight Capital, Brigade Capital, and above all, Soros Fund Management. Now, Soros had been preparing the ground, saying he thought that the euro was in danger of falling apart and breaking up. And the idea is to organize a bear raid against the euro as a means of relieving the speculative pressure against the dollar. And of course, Greece is the weak flank. They say that the consensus around this table over the filet mignon, any outcome of the Greek debt crisis is going to be very bad for the euro. And then they go on to say, in this Wall Street Journal account, that as soon as you get Greece going, that's the first domino. After that comes Spain, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, and of course California and Great Britain, and indeed the United States. And one of the people, the guy from Brigade Capital, said Greece will be a contagion that will infect all the sovereign debt in the world. In other words, government debt, national, state, local, provincial, of all national states. So we're getting towards a situation where it's either the hedge funds and the zombie banks will drive the national governments into bankruptcy, or the governments will put these hedge funds into receivership and protect themselves. Now, there's only one of a couple of cabals that were mentioned by the Wall Street Journal. Another one is Paulson and Company. It's different Paulson. It's not the same Paulson.
Hank Paulson.
Globop Financial Services. And then we have a group of zombie banks, all of them surviving because of U.S. taxpayer money. That would be Goldman Sachs. They couldn't be out of it. Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Barclays Bank. And remember, they were saved by the U.S. through AIG derivatives payments. So a lot of these people, of course, there to make money, but there's also a political purpose. It's to mask the weakness of the dollar. The dollar reached a low in the first week of December after falling all during the fall at about $1.50, 51 to a euro. Since then, the euro has been losing. So it's a support operation for the dollar. Now, the London Economist and the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times have all been mocking the Greeks and Prime Minister Zapatero of Spain, who has talked about international speculative conspiracy. They say, look, you guys are paranoid, this is conspiracy theory. But here we have it. What we have in front of us is I think under U.S. antitrust law, this may fulfill the definition of a criminal conspiracy and restraint of trade. And if they were doing this in the U.S. stock market, that would be a pool, and that would be illegal. So right. I think it's clear that what Greece needs is not austerity, but they need to do things like ban derivatives. They need to outlaw credit default swaps.
You know, this whole crisis is working great for Germany. First, under the Euro project, they got to reunify, which is something that Thatcher and Mitterrand of France warned against. But here we have a reunified Germany, and phase 2 will be the rise of Frankfurt to take over as the dominant banking center in Europe and push London out. So London as a banking center of Europe is gone. Frankfurt is on the ascent. So the 1-2 punch of Germany in all this is working out very well in their favor, and we're looking at a new era with a new German superpower. So the Pentagon and the U.S. military is very aware that credit default swaps and other derivatives are now being used as weapons to destabilize countries. Now, in terms of euro and the eurozone, of course, they're going to be the big winner in the currency war because they've got 10,000 tons of gold. And Britain has 300 tons, and America has maybe 8,000 tons. So this is the way the currency wars are going to go forward, and that we've now entered an era of financial war and currency wars. And America, of course, is stupidly spending billions fighting the old, rear guard action of missiles and tanks and CIA interruptions and bombing countries and sending drones. That's yesterday's war. There's a currency war is the new 21st century war, and the U.S. is woefully inadequate. So is the UK. Germany's got one of the biggest gold positions in the world, and the Eurozone has the biggest gold position in the world. So they're going to look very good in this situation. The IMF is bankrupt. The World Bank is bankrupt. All the major banks in the world are bankrupt. So to follow up on Rodney Shakespeare's comments, the system is collapsing. The various heads of states are pretending that it's not collapsing, but it is collapsing, and there is no money to loan into this system. But looking past that, you have to look at what will come as a result of this collapse, and that is a return to a gold standard. That's the end game in all of this. There may be a brief period where there's an attempt to introduce the IMF's special drawing right as a world reserve currency to take the place of the dollar as a way to extend this game maybe a couple of years longer. But putting that aside, the end result will be a return to the gold standard. That's why, for the first time in 30 years, central banks are buying gold. China's buying gold. Russia's buying gold. Iran's buying gold. They see the writing on the wall. We're going back to gold. And the central banks that were buying gold are in good position after this thing collapses. So I agree with Rodney. It's collapsing. What's going to come after it is a gold standard.
Max Kaiser.
10-day period or a 10-day period. This is, as Naomi Klein writes about, disaster capitalism. The bankers are constantly creating problems. They're like arsonists. They set a house on fire, then they come around to try to put out the fire and pick up a reward. So you can't believe a word coming out of their mouth. Now, in the case of the
This is rich bankers bailing out rich bankers on your credit card. That's the simple summary.
Patrick, I don't know. I think you would agree with me that Wall Street owns our government. I mean, it is. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Economists have a term for it. It's called regulatory capture. Society sets up regulators to protect us from certain industries like Wall Street, but often those regulators come under the thumb of the industry, and then they're called a captured regulator. Well, Wall Street has captured the institutions that are supposed to have protected our country from Wall Street. They've just become wholly owned subsidiaries. In fact, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you think this is the same thing? Because I think it was on last night's program, that I think this is just, we have merged our government and these gigantic corporations have merged. And the framework now is, if you're not in one of these gigantic corporations, forget about it, Jack.
It's called an oligarchy. There's actually an economist at MIT named Simon Johnson, who was the chief economist of the IMF. He's been giving, and he's been giving some wonderful lectures on this, where he says this is just like the IMF. What we're facing in this country is like when the IMF went into Argentina, Indonesia, Russia. What you have is an oligarchy, a group of powerful folks who've basically hijacked the government, and they get out of control. They make a lot of money for a while. They get over leveraged, then it collapses. And he says his job at the IMF was to go into places like Indonesia, and they always end up with a new leader who's a bold, young visionary that everybody loves. But the IMF's job is to go in and look them squarely in the face and say, is this guy, is he happy talk, or is he willing to really stand up and do the things that you have to do to break the back of the oligarchy? Well, the United States, and this is this economist Simon Johnson, he says, look, that's exactly the situation you're in here. And that's exactly the situation we're in. It transcends party politics. We have an oligarchy who has captured Washington, D.C., and they have just prevented, they manufactured this, not deliberately, it went much farther, but they manufactured the loopholes that let this happen. happen, and they're doing everything they can do to keep those loopholes from being closed.
Go to Ron Paul now. He's the congressman from Texas. Congressman, at the, you know, I draw this spider web up here, and I see it, and I think to myself, at the center of this really is the Fed. They're in this thing all the way around, and yet you want to talk about powerful people. You've got a majority of congressmen that are willing to say, we need to open up the books of the Fed. You can't even get this thing brought to the floor now. Why is that?
Well, so far we haven't been able to. We have 273, which includes almost 90 Democrats, so the large majority of the congressmen want it.
So who's blocking it? Can you name names? Who's blocking it?
Well, I don't know the individual, but I would know one thing. If Obama wanted change and change of this system, at least exposure, he could do something. But you know, he got nearly $1 million from Goldman Sachs. So we don't expect anything from the administration. The same people, you know, this to me is a perfect example of my argument that I've made, and I think you generally agree with it. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two parties.
No.
You know, they're owned by the same people. You take this Goldman Sachs issue. Wouldn't it be revealing if we were able to get the transcripts and all the agreements and discussion that all Treasury and all Federal Reserve officials have had with Goldman Sachs? I mean, that would be a revelation. But boy, they're hysterical when they think we're coming down close to saying that we might be able to open up the books. I got some information the other day that during another crisis in Central America, the banks were in trouble, and our Fed went to the IMF and told the IMF to pay the interest to the banks. I mean, that's how corrupt it is. And the whole thing is as this system continues to falter, they're not going to give up. They're going to move all these shenanigans over to the IMF. They're going to have a world organization. So the powerful elite then will have a world currency. That's what they're being planning for right now. So we as a people really have to wake up. My effort is exposing the Fed, opening up the books. The American people want it, and we have both Republicans and Democrats demanding it. But you made the right point. How are we going to get the leadership to do what the American people are demanding?
How much time do we have, Ron? How much time do we have to wake up?
That is hard to say. Timing is really tough in Austrian economics. We know what the inevitable outcome will be. But I would guess it's just a few more years. I would think the handwriting will be clearly on the wall before Obama finishes his first term, which means the next shoe is the crisis in the dollar, the value of the dollar, not just the financial system. We will see high inflation rates soon.
Congressman Ron Paul, thank you very much, sir.
A currency world war is looming for the global economy. This according to Russia having sent out the warning. The concerns were sparked by Japan's move to lower the yen in pursuit of better exports, causing fears of a massive chain reaction as other nations follow suit. Altis Igor Piskunov reports.
An economy not so far away. Actually, the global economy is on the verge of a currency war. Let me paint a quick picture for you. Japan, where the newly elected prime minister is pushing for a more aggressive central bank policy, has been dropping the yen. It went down by 11% since December. Meanwhile, in the European Union, experts say Europe has fired the first shell. EU financial authorities warn the rising euro is threatening the economy. Despite the debt and Eurozone crisis, austerity measures and so on, the euro grew by 7% in the last 6 months. So it is possible the EU will start dropping it also. Now, the United States have been printing bucks for the last 5 years to support the markets, but that also makes the dollar cheaper. Washington has been looking over the shoulder at China, which holds the majority of U.S. foreign debt, and Beijing is also accused of holding back its currency. The reason why they do that is when a currency is dropped, the export becomes cheaper, makes the country more compatible. But it isn't applauded by other countries, which may retaliate by dropping their currency. So it's kind of like a domino effect. But the last time a major currency war happened was during the Great Depression era in the 1930s, which resulted in a slowdown of international trade, and all was part of the lead up to World War II. But that's not all. If the exports become cheaper, the imports become more expensive. So ordinary people buy less. And when they travel abroad, that's more expensive as well. So basically, that kind of worsens their their quality of life. So that leads to public disapproval, unrest, and so on. So it's kind of like a domino effect. Like I said, the dominoes are all there in place, and that's why Russia is so worried about it. It currently chairs the G20. Its financial ministers are set to meet in Moscow next month, and we should expect quite a skirmish.
Σύννεφο μαζί σου το ταξίδι, αυτό το ξέρω. Το έχω κάνει πιο παλιά πολλές φορές και το υποφέρω. Μα όταν συγχώνεις ουρανό και μου μικραίνει πάλι γη, με πονάει ξανά του χρόνου η πληγή. Μοιάζουν μικρά τα είδωλά σου Βαβυλώνα. Την εξαίρεση ότι βλέπω στον κανόνα. Είναι αφαντοί οι νικητές, αδύναμοι μηχανισμοί. Σου τα είδωλά σου από εδώ αναγνωούν την ύπαρξή σου. Μα αυτό που μένει και η πιο μεγάλη διαφορά είναι ότι κρύβεται καλά η διαφθορά κάτω από σάρκες, μέσα σε τείχους. Σαν να κρατάει φυλακισμένους λέει τους ήχους της ψυχής που έχει γνωρίσει απ' την γαλήνη. Για να αγκαλιάζει ότι μίσουσε και ότι φτύνει. Παντού μογεί μήπως θολώσει η εικόνα. Μα εγώ σ' ακούω και σε νιώθω Βαβυλώνα.